Welcome back to the Friday show presented by Woodbine Racetrack. I'm Ray Pollock here with Natalie Voss, editor-in-chief of the Pollock Report. Well, after 2 big weeks of racing, the Queen's Plate and the Woodbine Mile at Woodbine, it's the weekend for the standardbred breed up there. Saturday night at Mohawk, they've got the Mohawk Million for 2-year-old trotters. There's 3 other big stakes on the night. 2-year-old Pacers go in the Metro Pace. That's a $750,000 race. The Milton Stakes for 3 and up Pacers, and the She's a Great Lady for 2-year-old pacing fillies. Natalie, you probably don't know this, but I actually worked at Hollywood Park Harness and Los Alamitos Harness in my early days at the Daily Racing Forum. So I love harness racing. I think it's, especially at this level, it's a lot of fun.
I didn't realize that Hollywood Park had harness racing, to be honest.
They did. The Western Harness Association had big-time harness racing in Southern California, and now they race at Sacramento, and it's big time at Mohawk. I was there. Was it last summer? And it's a great facility, and this is their big night. So be sure to tune in. Post time for the Mohawk Million is 10:45 p.m. Eastern, so you got no excuses. I mean, it's before bedtime. It's after dinner. Tune in. Well, the big news today is the fact that this Kentucky Supreme Court kind of sent a jolt through the Kentucky horse racing industry by overruling a lower court decision saying that historic horse racing machines, which long ago were called instant racing, are not pari-mutuel, and thereby a court order from 2018 in Franklin Circuit Court has to be looked at again. Basically, I think that court order said that the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission acted properly in setting up regulations for it because historic horse racing is pari-mutuel. Now, these look like slot machines, but they're based on the results of former races. So, Natalie, what's your quick take on this? We really haven't had a lot of time to digest this, but what is your take on what this means?
Well, it seems like the state Supreme Court's decision was based on the way that the wagering is pooled. They seem to think that traditional pari-mutuel, the way you would bet on a race, you're betting against other patrons who are also funneling their money into one designated pool for that single event. The state Supreme Court has indicated that they think that since that's not how historical horse racing or instant horse racing is working, that doesn't qualify. I'm not sure that there's going to be an easy way to argue around that, because it seems as though that conclusion was based on a closer examination of how the wagering and how the money works. So I don't know whether it would be in the best interest of the racing authorities to appeal this decision, or whether they're going to have to go on to the legislature. The suggestion at the end of the state Supreme Court decision seemed to really strongly hint that if we're going to expand the definition of pari-mutuel wagering, which is appropriate under the Horse Racing Commission's authority, then we need to go through the legislature, not the judicial system. So it would seem as though maybe this is now going to sort of transition into a fight that happens over there.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big time. This could have a big time effect if the legislature doesn't get involved here. I went to the reports on the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission website. The fiscal year that just ended in June, there was $2.2 billion wagered on these historic racing machines in Kentucky in the last fiscal year, with about $15.5 million going into the Thoroughbred Development Fund for purses. And, all you have to do is look at what Kentucky Downs does with their historic horse racing machine money over their short 6-day meet. I mean, the purses are unbelievable. So if they pull the plug on this, this is an earth-shattering thing. Now, having said that, the Kentucky legislature has David Osborne, Speaker in the House, Damon Thayer as the Senate Majority Floor Leader, 2 people who are very sympathetic to and involved in horse racing. Governor Andy Beshear is pro-racing. I think we're going to see some sort of quick fix to this. there will be opposition. The family foundation that brought the lawsuit against the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission, they smell blood. They're going to go to their favorite legislators and try to block any kind of legislation. But it looks like that has to be the next step as far as the horse industry is concerned. I'm sure the family foundation is looking at some sort of an injunction to try to shut down the places that are offering historic horse racing. And it should be noted that these are specific to one type of machine, Encore Gaming, formerly Exacta. Those are the machines at Kentucky Downs, and they have them at the Red Mile and Ellis Park as well. Churchill Downs started their Derby City Gaming with a different kind of machine, but the family foundation, I'm sure, is going to go after them next because I think it's kind of based on the same formula. So the Churchill technology is slightly different, but the family foundation wants to shut it all down. Let's just face it, they're anti-gambling. If they could get rid of horse racing, they would too.
Right, and I don't think it necessarily helps horse racing's case in this situation that instant racing or historical racing machines do closely resemble slot machines. I've seen one. It was not immediately clear to me what the horse race on the video had to do with what I was doing with the machine. That could just be my lack of familiarity with the system. I'm sure it is. But if I'm the family foundation, I'm looking at that, and that's just going to sort of further incense me. So it's hard to imagine that the appearance is not going to continue to cause problems and be intuitive maybe to people who are sort of legislators who are maybe a little bit more in the middle might look at it and say, yeah, that looks like a slot machine to me. So it's going to be interesting to see how the perception kind of plays out when this gets into a slightly different arena.
A little bit of historical perspective. This all started in the late 1990s in Arkansas when Oaklawn Park was really in deep trouble. And they went to, between Eric Jackson, who was, I think, then GM of Oaklawn Park, went to some people at Amtote and said, we got to figure out some way to combat the casinos that are in neighboring states because we're losing customers to all these casinos. And they developed what was known as instant racing based on historical horse racing results. I think there was some tweak made in the Arkansas legislature that allowed the results of historic races instead of live races to be included. And so they were able to figure out a way to create these games. And actually what happened then is Oaklawn Park went to the Arkansas legislature and said, hey, look, we've had this open for a few years. The world hasn't come to an end. Yes, people are gambling at our facility. We'd like you to just loosen it up a little bit more and let us do some other things. And they've done that. And as a result of that, Oaklawn Park is one of the most successful racetracks in the country. As far as I know, the world hasn't come to an end in Arkansas. And I think they still have people who are on the religious right that seem to get by just fine. So if we can follow Arkansas's path, I think we'll be okay here in Kentucky with instant racing, because this is a lot of money that goes into purses and to the state of Kentucky. So I think the governor will be interested in working with the legislature to get something done as quickly as possible. Speaking of legislature, Natalie, you've been following the federal legislation, Horse Racing Integrity Act, now the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act. Why don't you just give a quick update on who's for it and who's against it?
Well, it seems like it's pretty much the usual suspects who are for and against it. We had a statement come out from the U.S. Trotting Association maybe earlier this week or the end of last week, declaring their relatively, strong aversion to the federal legislation. The Jockey Club put out a statement sort of basically saying, oh, you sound awfully insecure. The USTA has released another statement. It's a little like watching a tennis match at this point between those two. You're just kind of like, oh, gosh, what now? The American Quarter Horse Association also put out a statement yesterday outlining their concerns. One of their issues apparently being the removal of, or the partial phase out, I should say, of furosemide They mentioned also that they're in the process of either beginning or planning a study to see if quarter horses are uniquely predisposed to EIPH and therefore would be sort of uniquely harmed by the removal of furosemide on race day, which is not something I've heard before, but might be sort of their primary means to try to get around this. Of course, the federal legislation as it stands now, the draft for indicates that for non-thoroughbred breeds, either the breed association or the racing commission, I think it depends on which group you're talking about, has kind of the option to opt in to being regulated by this new federal authority. They're not automatically sort of covered, which is a bit of a head scratcher because, obviously there's just going to be a lot of groups that don't opt in. So what would be the usefulness of that? Everyone's a bit confused on that as well. But it's pretty clear, at least initially, the trotters and quarter horses are not excited about this.
Right. Well, the last I heard, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell was going to put this bill. He's going to attach it to some non-controversial piece of legislation, maybe a continuing resolution to keep the government open, something along those lines. But then we had a death on the Supreme Court, and the Senate now will be turning their attention to that. The big question is, will they have the time to get to this before the election or during the lame duck session after the November 3rd elections? We'll have to wait and see on that. Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Friday Show presented by Woodbine. Be sure to tune in on Saturday night to watch the Mohawk Million for Mohawk. We'll see you next time.